Oh, Jesus. All right, in his Jubilee debate, Mark Manson makes 4 claims. 3 out of the 4 claims I'm like fully on board with. I'll read them off to you. 1, the manosphere is a billion-dollar business that profits off keeping men angry and insecure. 2, a woman's body count doesn't matter. 3, porn has done more damage to men than feminism has. 4, the most attractive men are those who like and respect women. So obviously the 3rd claim is the one that I take issue with. As soon as I saw that claim, I was like, what? You would think that the guy who's signing up to debate 20 people from the manosphere would be aware of like some of the most basic parts of the manosphere and red pill ideology. One of them being that they're very anti-porn. They hate porn, or at least they claim to. We'll also talk more about that, because it is not what it seems on the surface. Let me just say that. Because the only claim I really take issue with here is the porn is more damaging to men than feminism. That's the only thing I'm going to be talking about in this video. I have collected clips of each of the 4 people that stepped up to debate Mark, and I'm gonna be telling y'all how I feel about it and debunking some things too.
Let's say the people who own OF right now. Let's say that the most profound ability to make the America's daughters prostitutes from the young age all the way to the high age, right? And on a vast majority, what they say, 35 to 40% of women right now, over 18 going up into 45 are on OnlyFans right now.
That's not true.
Absolutely ridiculous. But yes, definitely.
I actually have the actual numbers from OnlyFans themselves.
Please give me that.
Yeah, so there are 3.7 million total creators on OnlyFans, 1.1 million in the US. About 90% are women, and only 70% are doing adult material. So that equates to about 700,000 women doing adult material in the US, which is roughly 3% of women between 18 and 40. Still a lot.
But you would say that's more destructive than feminism. When feminism gave you the sexual liberation movement to even empower women to believe that you get some type of power.
I think porn is more destructive for men than feminism is.
What 4chan thread did he get 35 to 45% of women are doing porn on OnlyFans? That's obviously incorrect. I'm glad that Mark at least had a stat ready to go that was fact-checked on screen in the video, and Mark was pretty spot on. It is about 2% of women in the US who are producing adult-oriented content on OnlyFans. I would even say it's less than that, because that number would the only way that they'd be able to get that stat is based on the number of women who have like made a creator account on OnlyFans. That doesn't mean that they're like successfully producing a lot of adult content. It means they made an account, it got verified as a creator account. They might have never actually even posted on it. They might have posted on it like 3 times and made $50, and that's it. So possibly even the 2 to 3% is still a slightly inflated figure, but yeah. Tan Sweater Guy is very incorrect on that. Also just really don't like the way that he's said America's daughters, making America's daughters prostitutes. And I suppose, I mean, it is timed, you know, they have about like, I think they have like 20 minutes per claim to go through, and Mark can debate as many people as possible in that 20-minute time frame. So there's some time pressure here, but I really wish that Mark had at least like corrected that guy, because it's just, I don't know. It's like, why are you signing up to debate? I keep saying debate. I don't know why. It's like, I'm getting my Spanish and English consonants mixed up. The B is becoming a V. Why is Mark volunteering to debate manosphere people if you're not even gonna do the bare minimum of like trying to at least express your dislike of them using such like offensive language, you know? I don't know. It's just, the second person that gets up to debate Mark is, believe it or not, a woman. A woman who loves the manosphere. Let's hear what she has to say.
So porn use is selective. Not every man uses it, but every man is subjected to feminism in their society, in their marriages, in their workplace, in their home. You can choose autonomously not to watch porn. You can't choose to end no-fault divorce, which is exposing children 70% more likelihood to being abused. Same with the women. Opening the welfare program for single mothers, which is increasing the crime rate, which is
There is a fact check on the screen that says losing welfare benefits is directly linked to increased crime, not expanding them. A 2022 study of supplemental security income benefits found the annual likelihood of incarceration increases by 60% in the 2 decades following SSI removal.
If that were true, then you would expect to see male mental health decline in the most progressive countries in the world, right? There are countries that are even more feminist than we are.
Okay.
Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Australia, there are lots of them. You don't see the same decline in male mental health that you see here or in the UK.
Are the populations the same in Germany and Sweden?
He's telling this woman to consider the information from other countries. You know, men in European, he mentions like the Germany, UK, Sweden, Nordic countries that have higher rates of like satisfaction, happiness, etc., including among men. Like men in those countries tend to report higher levels of happiness, satisfaction, all that, compared to men in the US. Now, they're debating this on the subject of like feminism's influence. But I also want to throw out that when you look at rates of porn viewing, porn consumption in all different countries, those are also pretty much the same, at least among the countries that don't completely like outlaw it. Of course, we don't really have data on those countries, but as far as we know, in the same countries that Mark was just talking about, men still watch porn. Men in Sweden, men in Norway, Germany, Spain, the UK, France, like, men are still watching about the same amounts of porn in those countries that men in the US are. And Mark is not addressing that at all. So I don't know how his argument on this note stands. The gender policies that we have in the US and the, you know, greater degree of equality between men and women and the push for feminism since, you know, the 60s isn't the thing that's making men unhappy here, but he's claiming that porn is, that it's contributing to societal damage and degrading men's mental health. Well, by his own standards, by his own data here and the argument that he's presenting, he's gotta also be wrong that porn is somehow more damaging to men's mental state or health than feminism is. So I don't really get that. I feel like Mark's missing something. Either Mark's missing something or Mark has a real problem with porn and he just doesn't want to admit it. Maybe Mark's wife caught him watching something and this is like his really public way of trying to crawl out of the doghouse. I don't know.
As they are in America.
No, there's lots of differences, obviously, but my point is that if feminism was just by and large the problem for men's outcomes, then you would see a clear pattern across all of the most progressive countries.
Well, I said everything I wanted to say about that. It's the next guy we've got coming up. I'm gonna call him Red Hat Man. Funny enough, it's not a MAGA hat, but it is just a red hat.
Question, as a male feminist, aren't you okay with women doing porn? Aren't you okay with them having high body counts? Or, because feminism tells women if they want to sleep around, that's totally fine. Just like you said, so I'm confused. If porn is more destructive and feminism pushes that they're allowed to do that, I get there are some feminists, I'm not sure if you are one who's anti-porn, maybe you're just pro-sexuality but anti-porn, but how can you explain that to me?
I'm generally sex positive. People should be free to explore their sexuality as they see fit, I think, including women. I don't think that they should be demeaned or degraded for exploring that sexuality.
I get that. Wouldn't you then be okay with women doing pornography then?
I am okay with women doing pornography. My issue is the ubiquity and the access that men have to it, particularly young men.
I'm thrilled to know that Mark thinks that women should be allowed to express their sexuality and that Mark is apparently also totally fine with women doing porn. Or is he? We'll get to that later when we start talking about the follow-up interview that he did.
Okay, so quick question. You're a father? I'm assuming you are?
I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a father, right? So I have access to all the internet in my house. If I want to, I could just block it off and not let my kids watch anything like that, right? Which I do. My children aren't that age yet, but when they get to it, I would do that, right? So that would kind of eliminate that. But if my kids go outside or just watch something on TV that pushes feminism or whatever the case may be, or sometimes I've seen them where they're on just kids' YouTube and there's something pops up for like OnlyFans or something. I'm just like, how is this popping up on kids' YouTube, right? Which you would think has parental control in it. Sure. So that's something that's unavoidable. Where I could just put something on my internet that says, hey, anything that has adult content on there, my children cannot see.
The first thing I'll say is that, do you think that your kids are going to get around those blocks? Because
I hope not.
statistically they will.
Well, maybe I'll get it from a friend or something.
Go to a
but-
friend's house or whatever. The data is, I think it's 92% of boys by 18 have been exposed to pornography, and about roughly 75% of them are exposed to it on
So
a regular basis.
are you full ban on it?
It's, I'm for two things. One is I do think there should be tighter restrictions around it, and I do think there should probably be some regulation around it.
Yeah, because you could just turn on a camera, have sex, and say it's porn, and pay the woman, and technically she was a prostitute.
Yeah. And secondly, I think there should be just
No, Mark, no. We have a term for that in the industry, actually. A guy who thinks that that's what porn is. Oh, you just pay a woman money and you turn on the camera and you have sex with her and then you can call it porn. No, we call that guy with camera. That's a derogatory term. That's like a dipshit guy who, what he really wants to do is hire like a very high-end escort, but he's too poor to do that. So he tries to exploit someone else's labor by offering a low cost and being like, oh yeah, you'll be a star when you fuck me on camera. And it's always like some ugly, nasty old guy. Honestly, I was surprised. Like, he gets a boo from me on the guy with camera remark. He gets a thumbs up from me though on his remark where he is actually goes into this assuming personal responsibility for the content his children consume. What a novel idea. He literally says, I think it's my responsibility to set up like filters and age blocks on browsers and technology that my kids might use so that they don't see something inappropriate. I'm not sure what he meant about seeing like an OnlyFans ad on YouTube. Like, maybe you need help setting up a kid's YouTube account. And also, by the way, if your kid's YouTube account is like a segment on your adult account, you still need like other filters on there. You still definitely need other filters on there. But did you hear what Mark said in response to that guy saying that? Mark went, well, what makes you think your kids aren't gonna get around those filters? Because statistically, they always do. Yes, Mark, yes. Kids can get around the filters, usually by using a VPN. And now, I think already at one point in his response to someone else, Mark has at this point mentioned like age verification, that there need to be better age gating procedures on adult websites. So my question for Mark is, since you're aware that kids can get around whole site block type filters using a VPN, what makes you think they can't get around age-gated filters using a VPN? Because at this point we have like 26 states in the US that have passed age verification laws. And we have enough information about some of the earliest of them that passed and went into effect back in like 2022 that we know that underage people are getting around those laws as well by using VPNs. Or what's probably most common is they just go to a different shady ass website that's hosted overseas, because the US government cannot force websites based outside of our country to comply with US law. So there's always gonna be tons of porn sites that don't verify age at all. I mean, what do you do about that? Making it illegal isn't gonna stop that either. I think this really is an issue where it's like parents have to be paying attention to what their kids are doing online. And it goes deeper than that. Look, it's a whole discussion. Like, for the record, I'm not against age verification. I think the way that it's being implemented in the US currently is, honestly, it's only being done because it's like an easy political win for both parties. Democrats and Republicans generally support these laws, and they don't really accomplish anything. They just put adults' private data, personal information at risk. They don't effectively protect kids. We've even seen some right-wing politicians now proposing that we ban VPNs, which that would be a literal nightmare. So yeah, I'm not sure why Mark Manson understands that kids can get around adult website filtering technology, but he thinks that the age verification stuff won't be subject to the same workarounds, because it definitely will. So here's the fourth guy that debated Mark on this claim, and this guy actually was the most kind of normal seeming person out of the four of them to me. They didn't even really talk specifically about like adult media that much. Oops. Sorry, my cat feeder is going off. It's just gonna keep dinging, isn't it? Just keep on dinging. Okay, I think it's done. This is Big Blue Eye Guy.
Or maybe a little bit ironic about the claim is that I think that we're kind of looking at two things that are feeding into each other. I think modern feminism, gender feminism, is by and large responsible or contributing to a lot of the loneliness and withdrawal that we see, which is causing an uptick in pornography, which you and I are in major agreement, totally unhelpful and detrimental to society.
No, I can tell you what caused the uptick in pornography. The pandemic. Everyone was stuck at home for a year, and OnlyFans blew up. And the economy sucked, and a lot of people couldn't work normal jobs. That is why so many people got on OnlyFans in 2020. And a lot of them found they liked it, and they made good enough money that they stuck with it. And yeah, so now we have a lot more people making porn, you know, homegrown porn stars than ever before. But to say that it's caused by feminism is pretty incorrect, I would say.
You had me up until those last few sentences. I think we agreed on everything up until there. I agree a lot of these statements about young boys being told that they are just inherently problematic for existing, right? Like, these are all, we're on the same page there. Like, that, those things just are terrible narratives to have in the culture. Terrible. That said, I personally don't think they are widespread enough or ubiquitous enough to really point at them and say, that's the problem. Because when you look at the problems that have been affecting young men and boys, they go back decades. They go back to the 80s and 90s before any of this stuff started.
Wait, Mark, are you saying that the problems that affect young men and boys, the ones that you guys are talking about here, have been going on since before there was so much porn on the internet? Doesn't that defeat your own claim, Mark? I'm gonna lose my mind.
So I think it's a little bit of a red herring. I think it's a lot of political talking points that get a lot of attention, right? It's like we hear about something crazy happening in elementary school. Everybody gets riled up and freaked out, and we're like, that's the problem. And it's not. That's one school. It's a minority case. It's something that hasn't been ubiquitous for more than a few years. Whereas there are like real structural problems and issues that have been going on for decades that have been harming young men.
There
that
are.
just never get talked about. And I feel like pornography is one of the larger ones.
Yeah, so that's really interesting.
Calling pornography a structural issue is kind of hilarious, I have to admit. It's kind of funny. People who struggle with using pornography too often probably do very much feel to themselves like it is a structural issue. But the porn industry is not like some boogeyman that's out to like get everyone and like take over the world. I mean, they're talking about it like it is, and it's very weird to watch from my perspective, being someone who's worked in this industry for 14 years. And I'm wondering if anyone's gonna bring up the economy, because to me, this little back and forth that Mark and Big Blue Eye Guy are having, they're dancing around it. You know, they're like, oh, structural issues. These things have been going on for decades. These issues affecting men and boys, they've been happening since the 80s. Oh, dang it, the porn and the feminism. You know what else has been happening since the 80s? Reaganomics. The economy's been slowly marching toward late-stage capitalism, and now it's really, really here, baby. I wonder if they're gonna address that at all, or if they're just gonna keep scapegoating everything that has nothing to do with it, actually.
I think that you made a point prior when you were talking about sort of the shift in the economy that we're seeing, kind of going from physical-based careers to more social-based careers, and that women on average tend to prefer those social-based careers, and that's tend to be where the economy is going. So I'm totally with you there. I think that's one of the major issues. I think the overprescription of methylphenidate medication, pathologizing male play behavior, fatherlessness, all of these things are contributing. But again, the problem is that the left controls the megaphones of society. So the left controls Hollywood. The left controls mainstream media. So, and the left is part of this cultural movement about patriarchy and toxic masculinity and the demoralization of young men at every twist and turn, starting in elementary schools, which are by and large dominated by women who are teachers, particularly left-leaning women who sort of propagate this narrative that men are these really, really dangerous, pathologizing cretins of society. What do? They withdraw. They say, okay, well, if I participate in society, I become evil. Maybe I'll just withdraw, and maybe I'll just hang out in my mother's basement, and maybe I'll watch porn, because if I don't want to be evil, well, at least I could be harmless. At least I could do nothing. So I think you and I are in agreement here.
Oh my God, he got so close. He said the word economy and I got so excited. I was like, bro, he's getting it. He sees the light, and then he's just full circled it back on down to, well, it's women's fault. He mentioned how part of what's ailing men in American society is that this movement toward career paths that value soft skills more. and it is true statistically that women tend to do better at those jobs. Those tend to be like a lot of corporate jobs, managerial class type stuff. And yes, women do tend to outperform men in those kinds of roles. But it is not the fault of feminism that those roles themselves have become more desired. That's been a process that's been happening since the 70s and 80s, when union membership started plummeting in this country, thanks in large part to Reagan, and the loss of a lot of manufacturing jobs in the US, and like the kinds of labor that were, roles that were much more desired for men to be filling. And it's obviously more complicated than that, but that's just like my shorthand of everything that I want to say about that. So it's kind of wild that this guy's like, he kind of does see part of it correctly, but he's still just within that grasping for a way to make it women's fault, when really the decisions that laid the groundwork for the way the economy in the US is functioning now, those decisions were not made by any women at all. Those decisions were made by men. Very, very powerful men. And then it's just, I love the little fucking backhand he throws out to school teachers, seeming to say that like, yeah, well, men are being raised wrong and part of it's to blame on teachers that are usually women. Again, there's a reason that a lot of public school teachers tend to be women. And it's not because women just desire to like control all of society. Those are a form of labor that we traditionally like make fun of men for doing. Nursing, teaching. These are things that are thought of as like women's work. It's also why public school teachers are paid like shit, because they're mostly women. Funny that he seems to have some criticism of that, but it is coming from entirely the wrong direction.
I think you're downplaying a little bit just how serious and pervasive these narratives are that's coming out of the third and fourth wave feminist movement, gender feminism, however you kind of want to call it. And when you have all of those cultural megaphones in the ear of young men telling them, you are the problem, be more like a woman, suppress those urges, don't be aggressive, don't go out and work hard, don't bother tuning into those masculine urges, those then get suppressed. And what happens when they get suppressed, they manifest in these really sort of crude and dangerous ways. And I think that's what you see, why the manosphere even exists in the first place, right? I think that one could kind of understand the manosphere as maybe a response to gender feminism, or a backlash to gender feminism, which I think is obvious to predict, right? Of course, such a radical movement denigrating young men would produce sort of a fascist or psychopathic backlash that is equally unhelpful.
While he's in the middle of like blaming all of men's issues on women, he's now fully just admitting, because he does apparently see, like, yes, the manosphere and like red pill ideology fully is nothing more than a backlash to women gaining more equality over time. But he also admits that he literally is like, yeah, and so it's normal that it should be a little fascist and psychotic, like as though that's totally fine. He's just so close, and he's just not getting it. And at this point, he's so close and still not getting it. I'm not sure he'll get it ever. I'm not sure he's like capable of getting it. Mark's demeanor through most of this debate is like, he makes his claims and he does like kind of sort of debate his claims, but for the most part, he's just there to listen to the manosphere guys complain, a shoulder to cry on, if you will. But he's not, what Mark is doing in this whole episode is not so much debating. I don't know that I would call it that. He doesn't really have any super solid refutations for most like rebuttals that he's presented with. I guess the one really good one that he did early on in this segment was correcting the guy who threw out the like bonkers OnlyFans statistic. But other than that, he's not really like actually trying to debunk anything that they're saying for the most part. More often than not, he seems to be like agreeing with them and like giving them some leeway to have like kind of shitty opinions. And maybe that's his thing. I don't know. He is a self-help author, so maybe he's just more focused on like, oh, someone needs to listen to these guys, which yes, someone does need to listen to these guys. But I'm actually not sure that that someone is Mark Manson, and that the way he should be listening is in this particular public debate format. Because at this point, it just looks like this circle of 20 people is getting like free reign to stomp all over Mark Manson and shout about their crappy opinions. Now let's watch some of the highlight clips from the follow-up interview that Mark did with Jubilee guy, whose name I don't know. So this video was actually like an hour long, and I pulled some highlight clips of things that Mark and Jubilee guy said that I thought provided some insight, some further context into some moments from the debate itself.
There is this connotation that feminism was really tied to sex, free sex, birth control, so the decision to have as much sex as you want, Sex in the City, then is kind of this like...
Sex in the City, that's like 40 years after the...
2000s or the 90s. And so it had more of a provocative or connotation to it than I think maybe the like core tenets of feminism necessarily stand for. And I mean,
There's a very good reason that women's sexual autonomy and liberation was very much centered in second wave feminism and in every wave of feminism since then on some level. And it's because if women don't have the autonomy to decide if, when, how, and where they're gonna have a child, if they don't have full control over their own reproductive capabilities, then we don't really have any power at all. We cannot have equality if we're not in control of our own reproductive systems. Simple as that. The idea that feminism in the 70s, that like women's lib and like second wave feminism and, you know, and third and fourth wave, that it's about women getting to have as much sex as they want all the time, is not what feminists have ever said or really even argued for. It is the way that men who hate feminists have talked about feminists to make us all sound like horrible slut witches. Which, as a horrible slut witch, yeah, most, you know, modern feminists will defend a woman's right to do that, but that's not like the point of what the movement is arguing in favor of. When sexuality is brought into it, it's often in the vein of like, we need to be the ones who are in control of that. And also, a lot of the centering of those things was meant to combat rape culture and the prevalence of sexual abuse and rape. And these two crusty dudes talking about it like with not one iota of self-awareness about it is kind of, it would be hilarious to me if it weren't actually depressing.
My understanding is that I think around the 90s, feminists almost kind of split themselves into two camps, which they called the sex positive feminists, and then I don't think it was sex negative feminists. I forget what the other term was, but I do remember in the 90s and 2000s, like there were a lot of feminists that were very explicitly, I'm a sex positive feminist, which means I believe women should be able to have as much sex as freely and as often as they want. And it was also often pro-pornography, pro-sex work, so on and so forth. You know, it's funny because I was a little bit surprised how many guys in the circle or how many people in the circle agreed with me on the porn thing. I actually expected a little bit more pushback on the porn side, but it as I recall, pretty much everybody was like, yeah, porn's terrible and it's really messing everybody up.
In the 80s, round about the Meese Commission era, there is a radical feminist called Andrea Dworkin, and she was in bed with the right. And her whole thing as a radical feminist was that she was vehemently anti-porn and anti-sex work. Basically, she just believed that sexual interactions with men were always inherently exploitative and therefore they should be outlawed or avoided. That's what Mark is trying to remember, that split. And for the record, the rad femmes were a minority at the time, for sure. The legacy of like third and fourth wave feminism has continued to be overwhelmingly sex positive feminists. And we still have rad femmes today that Mark couldn't remember what they were called. He was like, they're not sex negative feminists. I mean, they should be called that, but no. Rad femmes, which are kind of in most ways the same as SWERFs, which are sex worker exclusionary feminists, which also have a lot of overlap with TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. There's a Venn diagram, and they're all just right there in the middle of like the worst.
Traditionally liberal people are kind of questioning what their comfort level is around like what should be societally normal around sex, or sexually charged imagery online, and how accessible should it be? How common do we want OnlyFans to be as a profession?
How common do we want lawyers to be as a profession? How common do we really want plumbers to be as a profession? How common do we want self-help authors to be as a profession? Man, there's just way too many accountants. How common do we really want them to be? I think that really says something about the degrading of our society when we have so many people doing these jobs out here.
Like really strong pushback to maybe even outlaw or criminalize porn altogether and kind of put it in the same category as IRL sex work. And so there's pressure on that issue coming from both sides. What do you think is like the action that should be taken around porn? Like if you have to kind of carve out your nuance.
It feels to me that the industry has evolved and morphed so much in the last 10 years that it's almost like I feel like regulators should come at it from first principles all over again, because it just doesn't, the porn you and I grew up with is just it's not that anymore.
So yeah, I just don't know that I would agree with his take that porn nowadays is like, oh, it's just so much more bad for you at this point in time right now because of the popularity of OnlyFans, the ability of people like me to produce and distribute our own content. It puts me directly in control in a way that if I had been a porn star in like 1998, that was not an option and I likely would have felt very exploited. I could have, you know? If I were really lucky, maybe not. But like, it is fact that there were a lot more guys with cameras back then trying to make a quick buck and like underpaying the women or like tricking them, you know? It's the idea that porn was better back then or less harmful than it is now is crazy to me. Crazy. He genuinely does not know what he is saying.
It's just across the board, all of the data around family, like having a consistent, stable family structure, is good. And so I think the right gets that correct. And I think the right is correct to very much push kind of family values into the cultural discourse and not let that go.
Which family values are we talking about from the right, Mark? Are we talking about Lindsey Graham? Rest in peace, by the way. Lindsey Graham, who is a causative self-hating gay man? Are we talking about Ken Paxton, who's a hypocritical adulterer? Are we talking about Mike Johnson and his son keeping track of each other's porn consumption? Or are we maybe talking about the Ohio Congressman Max Miller, who's running for re-election right now and refuses to drop out, even though he threw boiling water onto his ex-wife's face and then beat his 2-year-old daughter and broke her collarbone? These are all Republicans, and they're doing a whole lot for family values, aren't they?
On the other hand, if you look at pushing on people's sexual insecurities, demonizing sexuality, that's not healthy either. Like, that doesn't really result in well-functioning, stable people either. So it is, like, I do think the left has a point that, hey, this doesn't make you a bad person. Like, if you go through a phase in college or in your 20s where you sleep around and you're kind of a wild child, like, that's okay, you can do that, right? If you mess up every once in a while and cheated on your ex-boyfriend, like, you're not a horrible person. Like, we all have to kind of learn our own sexualities and learn our own relationship patterns. And so I think kind of the leniency or the forgiveness on the left for sexual behavior is also well placed.
Why would sexual behavior be something that anyone ever needs to ask forgiveness for? Unless Mark is coming from a place of like a very puritanical, evangelical, Christian, theological worldview, which maybe he is. Again, I haven't read his books, I don't really know, but I mean, he never brought up religion in any of the debates, so it doesn't seem like he's arguing from that place. It's very weird. There's a lot of things that are very incongruous about what he says. One of his literal claims, number 2, is a woman's body count doesn't matter. He says all this stuff, but then he uses language that makes it sound like he does actually think that women being in control of their sexuality is like not something to be proud of, at least. He can claim he doesn't have a problem with it, but he seems uncomfortable with it. Like, in a very basic way, he does actually seem uncomfortable with it. Or maybe he's just trying so hard to come across like a centrist in this, you know? And I think, if I had to guess, that's probably really where it comes from, because as a self-help writer and coach who specifically does focus on helping men, he's definitely aware that most of his target market are being stolen by manosphere influencers. So if he says something that comes across as way too woke, maybe he is worried about alienating his own audience. So if that's where this is coming from, I can get it. It just leads me back to what I've already kind of said, which is I don't understand why Mark was the person picked to do this debate. It doesn't really make sense to me. He not only doesn't seem to have a deep enough understanding of the manosphere and of red pill ideology, he doesn't seem to have clear enough opinions of his own to actually be able to successfully refute any manosphere ideology. It's like most of this debate is just a giant nothing burger.
I mean, I think there's this guy, James Fishback. I'm not sure how familiar you are with him. He's running, I think, for office. I don't know. But he's been on the show, not in the center, but he's been in the circle. He's, I think, running for office in Florida, and he's proposing this thing called a sin tax, which is, I mean, that's like as Christian nationalist as you could get. It's like, you know, we want to tax things, you know, behavior that we see as sinful. I mean, who decrees what is a sin and not? Obviously, you need some sort of holy book to do that. So I think on its face, it's hard to like sell that. But I am surprised by how much there is a movement growing of really wanting to rid the existence of pornography.
That is real. If you haven't heard, James Fishback is running for office in Florida. He very famously put out this statement that was like, I specifically don't like that Sophie Rain, the OF girlie, is making so much money selling her body, and I want to slap her with a 50% income tax and call it a sin tax. Further in this clip, it becomes apparent to me that both of these men, both Mark Manson and Jubilee guy, they saw a headline about the sin tax thing, but they don't seem to actually understand what it is. Because we'll see in a second here, Mark very clearly misunderstands this to be like a service tax added on to the purchasing side. That is not what it is. James Fishback is proposing that every woman who does OnlyFans content has to pay a 50% sin tax. I haven't even heard him mention it in the context of any men doing OnlyFans, which I don't know if I can think of something a whole lot more like unconstitutional than charging a 50% in tax, but only on women who post nudes online. Also, if I had to pay a 50% income tax because I do OnlyFans, I would just kill myself.
I mean, look, I don't think prohibition on any of this stuff works. And as somebody who's traveled through countries that have supposedly banned porn and banned sex work, it's still there. Like, you can still find it. You still run into it. So like, I don't think you can really put the toothpaste back in the tube. But,
Right.
you know, the sin tax is maybe unfortunately worded, but I do think it makes sense. I mean, it's what we do with cigarettes and alcohol, right? And, you know, if you can just nudge people away from those behaviors.
Mark clearly doesn't know what the sin tax thing is. He's saying, yeah, we probably should do that, just like we put an extra tax on cigarettes and alcohol. Even though he's saying things to try to portray an image of himself as being like sexually liberated or progressive. You know, he said, I think it's fine if women want to do porn, and I think it's fine if women have a high body. It doesn't matter what a woman's body count is. Well, then why are you unwilling to understand that by declaring porn as being very harmful to men in the way that he did in his third claim in the debate, you are demonizing an entire category of women who are workers? I mean, clearly that's just not his priority here. Hello, it is I, Editor Siri, and I have more thoughts. Also, my camera cut off right at the end of that last clip, and I didn't realize it until way later, so I was gonna have to re-record some of what I said anyway. But here's what I'm thinking right now. I have a major headache, by the way. It's almost 1 a.m. and I've just been editing this video for... all I've done all day long is this fucking video. I understand that Mark Manson's intent with picking the porn is more harmful to men than feminism debate claim is about the way he perceives the effects of very widespread availability of porn on the development of boys, young men, and adult men. And he perceives that to have a very negative effect. As a sex worker, someone who's been working in the adult industry for 14 plus years, I obviously come with a different opinion into that. The way that I look at the issue is from the perspective of a laborer in that industry. And the biggest thing I can say about the issue that I have with Mark choosing this claim and representing the issues the way that he has in the debate and in this follow-up video is that Mark does not have any concept of people who work in the adult industry being workers, being working class people, being laborers who deserve any form of protection. And I think that that is actually a major issue. I think part of why this has been really just chafing me so bad is because this whole video and me watching these clips, it's like a microcosm that represents an issue that is much larger in our country, which is that people are upset and concerned and freaked out about how there's a lot of porn on the internet, and a lot of it is easily accessible and free and could be happened upon by an underage person fairly easily. This is why we're seeing things like COSA and like all these things that are essentially the goal is to age gate the internet. I think that that concern is being really misdirected. Do I depend on this industry to not be banned in order to make a living? Yes, I do. But that is not why I'm so annoyed. I promise. When I was a newbie to the adult industry, I started my career in 2012. Back then, tube sites were a huge issue. Having our stuff stolen, put on free sites, it was a big, big problem. And the adult industry was begging for help. We were begging for antitrust reviews to split up the monopoly that had started to completely consume all of the formerly, like, a large amount of, like, independent companies in the industry. And that antitrust enforcement, it never came. When FOSTA SESTA was introduced in 2017 and then went into effect in 2018, the adult industry was saying, please don't do this. This will cause harm to people who work in our industry. And we now know that the effects of that were exactly what we warned. It's put sex workers in harm's way. It also hasn't really been that effective at protecting kids online or preventing sex trafficking online, which was the goal of FOSTA and SESTA. Actually, I would argue that FOSTA and SESTA has had one of the biggest effects in creating the environment online, the quote-unquote pornified like environment that Mark Manson is complaining about. You open Instagram, you get a bunch of thirst traps. The reason that that happens is because FOSTA SESTA led social media platforms to be so heavy-handed with their censorship because they're terrified of being prosecuted for aiding and abetting sex trafficking, that if anyone even mentions or hints at sex, they get censored heavily. And that leads people who work in my industry to need to be more and more and more creative about the way that we present our content. Because what we do is still legal in the adult industry. And the only way that we can actually make a living is by marketing our goods. And that unfortunately does mean having a presence on social media websites. Honestly, if FOSTA SESTA had never been passed, I don't think we would be where we are now. I know that we wouldn't be where we are now. When age verification laws started to be introduced and passed, our industry was begging for a different solution. We were saying, please don't do this. This will harm a lot more people than it will help. It will probably be ineffective. The best way to actually protect kids is to do device-based age verification, where you get device manufacturers on board to certify the age of the device holder, which is a far more effective method. But that requires regulating big tech. So did that happen? No. And this just brings me back to what I find so annoying about it, which is that the system is very, very, very broken in the United States at almost every imaginable level. And I feel that people, a whole lot of people with good intentions most of the time, I think, are placing blame on a group of workers. Literally, most people who work in the adult industry are working class. Placing the blame on this entire industry of workers as though we're the boogeyman. People who work in my industry have never intentionally tried to get our shit out in front of underage folks. That's not the goal. It never was. So, yeah, it's wildly frustrating to see these narratives come up again and again and again, especially from people who purport to have this highly educated, thoughtful approach to things, people like Mark Manson. And he's doing a whole lot of talking about something he doesn't fucking know anything about. Should we probably look at how we regulate things like adult content on the internet so that we create a safer, better environment for everyone in this country and abroad? Yeah, I actually don't at all disagree with that. My problem mainly lies with the fact that when we talk about age gating, when we talk about age verification, identity verification, when we talk about how to protect kids online, and what responsibility the adult industry shares in that whole equation, the thing that never happens, and historically has literally not ever happened in the past, is legislators asking people who work in my industry what will work for us. We are never actually asked to cooperate. The best we can do is kind of force ourselves into those conversations by like the Free Speech Coalition, our trade association for our industry, going and lobbying Congress members and senators. And half the time they don't even listen anyway. We want to help, and the people in power don't want to hear it. They want to just demonize us. And unfortunately, it seems to me like Mark Manson has fully fallen into the narrative that that's how it is. That like the porn industry's running wild and it's a free-for-all, and the only way to protect kids online and protect the mental health of men against becoming addicted, I put that in air quotes because it's actually been debunked in a lot of scientific studies, you can't be addicted to porn. You can use porn as a very poor coping mechanism. That's what you can do. And that means you need therapy. It seems that Mark Manson has fallen into this trap of like demonizing this particular form of entertainment when it's not, we're not the baddies. We're not the baddies. If you want to complain about corporate power in the adult industry, I'll listen to you on that. But that's not what he's doing. He's creating a monolith. He's saying porn is harmful. And it is literally, it's not true. It is simply not true. Geez, I feel like I could really go on about this for so much longer, and the video is already so long. This is like the longest long-form video I've ever made about anything. So let me cut off my little editor note here and shoot y'all into the outro. I'm good. That's all I've got for now. I feel like, I've exhausted it. If I talk or think about that Jubilee video anymore, I think my head might explode. So I'm gonna call it right here and do my little sign off. So if you enjoyed this video, please interact with it. Please hit the like, hit the comment, leave a comment, send it to a friend. Ooh, you should send it to a friend, that'd be really cool. My name is Siri Doll. You can find me all over the place. Links in the linky place. If you watched this video and your name is Mark Manson and you're a self-help author, please get in touch with me. I am not joking. And not in a weird way. I don't mean it in a weird way. I mean it in the most platonic, professional way. Please get in touch with me. I would love to educate you more on some of these issues, genuinely. I really, really would. And I promise I won't be mean about it. Thanks for watching.